Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to this edition of Peace Talks. This is a special edition in the series that we're doing on the Jazz Central Mentoring Scheme. This is a scheme that's been set up by Arnie Somogyi, who's a jazz bassist and is a teacher also at the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire. And that's in association also with Jazz Midlands, headed up by Phil Rose, who also runs Birmingham Jazz. So the programme itself, it gives emerging jazz musicians based in the Midlands the opportunity to develop their compositional skills, performance skills, and also their own sort of professional profiles and professional networks. And that's all done under the mentorship of an established jazz musician from the UK scene. So today we'll be speaking with Alex Clarke, saxophonist. Hi, Alex, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
And your mentor on this project is the saxophonist Alex Garnett, correct?
Yep, that's right.
Fantastic. So I want to start off by congratulating you for your third nomination in the Parliamentary Jazz Awards that was announced last week. I think you were first nominated as the Newcomer of the Year in 2021, wasn't it? And then again in 22. So this is the third time up for that nomination. You've also had the Rising Star Award for the British Jazz Awards in 2019, and a Young Jazz Musician finalist in 2020. So you've got the accolades are certainly there coming in. So yeah, let's start with your own personal musical journey. How did you get into it, and specifically how into jazz as well?
So I think I've got my school to thank a lot for how I've ended up doing this. I was very fortunate. My school had a brilliant music department. So right from primary age, I started playing piano and, like most kids, the recorder. And then from the recorder, moved onto the flute. And then when I moved up into high school, there were two big bands in senior school, and I really aspired to join them because I always heard them in the concerts and was like, wow, this is great. But could never join because I played the flute. So I got a saxophone and yeah, joined the school band. And that was sort of my first introduction to jazz, I guess. And I just loved it. I really took to it, sort of the creativity of improvising, and just really connected with the music. So my dad started buying me CDs from charity shops of just like compilation albums of
Hmm.
loads of different types of jazz, quite a lot of big band, like early Glenn Miller stuff and that, and
Yeah.
just really, really connected with it. So then started going out to local gigs, and there were sort of two avenues to this. I started going out to my local trad club on a Sunday night
Hmm.
and listening to New Orleans stuff being played. There was like a house band, and gradually I started taking along my horn and asking to sit in for a couple of tunes. And I didn't particularly know what I was doing, but I didn't really know many tunes either at that point. But it was such good sort of on the bandstand practice in terms of how to figure out how to follow form and how to hear changes and play by ear. And
Mm.
I learned so much from doing that. And then the other avenue to that, I started going out to my local straight ahead club, which was Wilmslow Jazz Club. I grew up in Cheshire,
Right.
and the promoter there, Graham, he was really, really fantastic at letting me sit in with all the guest players that he got coming there. So like Alan Barnes, Greg Abate, Gillard Atzman, all of
Wow.
those guys. He'd sort of ask, got this kid in the audience, can she come and do a tune? And most of them were like super up for that,
Mm.
and happy to give it a try. And so I sort of had these two, the kind of more straight ahead bebop side going on, and then going and playing trad gigs as well. And that progressed from sitting in to gradually actually getting booked. And before I knew it, I was starting gigging. So this was like when I was about 16.
Right.
And in parallel with that, I was getting sax lessons. To start with, I didn't have any. I just got a saxophone from the local music shop and just learned via YouTube videos. And there's so many online resources out there now
Hmm.
that helped me get started. And then eventually I went to a saxophone workshop day in Sandbach, and Andy Scott, who teaches up at the Royal Northern, he was leading that workshop, and he said to me, like, who's teaching you? And I said, nobody. So I started seeing him probably like once a month or so. And
Okay.
we did a mixture of technique stuff because, my technique was dreadful because I didn't really, I'd never been properly shown, so had to crack quite a lot of things, sort of fundamentals. And then we looked at improvising and how to get into that. Andy's one of those genius people that's really, really into the heavy sort of classical saxophone tradition. He's a composer and stuff, but also he's a great jazz player. So he sort of gave me that all-round education that I needed. And yeah, it's kind of just carried on that trajectory. And yeah, here I am now.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you're certainly getting a lot of varied gigs. I mean, I've sort of popped along to clubs around in the because you're based in Warwick now, right?
Yeah, that's right. I studied at Birmingham for a year
Hmm.
and left at the end of my first year and got a job working at Warwick School. So that's what brought me down there, and
Right.
had a brilliant 3 years there teaching and sort of arranging and leading ensembles and stuff there. And then after the pandemic, just have stayed in Warwick, and I left that job because sort of freelance work was getting too busy and I was sick of leading a double life. It was getting a bit much. So yeah, down in Warwick now, and yeah, do a lot of lots of, well, not random, varied
Yeah,
work.
yeah.
I love big band playing, and fortunate to play with the Ronnie Scott's Jazz Orchestra once a month, so that's always great. And then stuff with my own band, stuff with other people's, and I still do some New Orleans stuff as well down at a trad festival next week actually. And I really like the variety, and I'm keen to do as much of different stuff as possible and try and be as versatile as I can.
Yeah, I saw on your website you're doing the 101 Dalmatians
Yeah, that's
musical.
another example of trying out a
Yeah,
bit of versatility and something different. It's my first time on a show, and
that's a busy schedule.
yeah, it's a lot. It's taking up more of my life than I was expecting it to, if I'm honest. But it's nice to have regular work, and it's a challenging pad. It's predominantly clarinet, and that's always,
Ah, okay.
I'll openly admit, it's my weakest double because I started on flute and came to the
Mm.
clarinet a bit later. So I'm really enjoying the challenge of getting that together as well, and like the whole discipline of turning up and reading 100% accurately, and trying to nail it to the best of my ability every night. It's a very different discipline to the creativity of improvising, and yeah, I've learned a new skill and I'm enjoying it.
Brilliant. That's grand. Um, so one of the things that I've been asking the others on the scheme, and some of the other younger artists that have played for us over at the Mars Bar in Worcester is kind of what it's like coming into the music industry as a professional musician in the 21st century, when things are quite different and progressing at quite a pace as well, um, in the industry itself, and kind of the way that music is distributed and consumed, and also getting gigs and that kind of thing. Yeah, what I'd love to get your thoughts on kind of what that's like now, sort of.
Yeah, so there's a couple of big topics here. I think the first one's social media engagement, and also like the idea of streaming. And I don't like either of them. That's the short
Mm,
answer. I really wish that, you were booked purely based on your reputation and your playing. But in this day and age, I've arrived at a time where it's important to have a social media base and engage with people on there. And sometimes it feels a bit like you're just shouting into a void, and you're sort of preaching to the converted. You're just like advertising gigs to people who were either going to come or anyway, or who were musicians and probably
mm,
aren't going to come. And then it turns into feeling like you're almost just bragging to other musicians. Look, I'm working. Are you, kind of thing? And I really
right.
hate that. But at the same time, it's an expectation from promoters and venues to advertise your gigs, and you want to feel like you're doing your bit. But that whole side of sort of how many followers have you got? And, I think that's a
Mm,
bit of a toxic thing, because how many followers you have shouldn't equate to your worth as a musician and your sort of creative value. So it's a little bit messed up. But I'm happy to play the game because that's what the business is like now. And I do what I
mm.
can to promote my work and have a presence online and engage with people on there. And you make some good connections as well, and it is genuinely a helpful tool. I'm not slagging it off here. It can be a very positive thing in terms of, making new contacts and, discovering new venues and discovering new bands and that kind of thing. And then the other side is the whole streaming thing. And I'm old school. I've still got a whole CD collection and record collection and record
Yes,
player.
behind me
I
here
can
is
see yours behind. Yeah, it's
the
fantastic.
and the record's down on the left here.
And actually, it's interesting because I was teaching on National Youth Jazz Collective summer school last week, and we asked all the kids, like, how do you consume your music? And as you can predict, it was all just Spotify, Apple Music, the usual
Mm,
stuff. And none of them actually sat down, properly listened to a CD through in order. They
right,
just
yeah, yeah, yeah.
put it on shuffle. And I get it, that's good for, discovering lots of different music and sort of seeing what's out there. But it's kind of sad that, all the artists that have created an album and like a concept album where it deserves to be listened
Yeah.
to all the way through in order, and it deserves to be paid for with proper money rather than the like 0.0001p you get per
Mm,
stream, whatever. Um, yeah, it just feels kind of sad that that's not being consumed in the same way anymore. And as an artist who brought out a CD, I need to do another CD, but my latest CD was 2 years ago, and I've sold hard copies on gigs. I think there is still a market for that, which is nice. People like to buy what they've heard that night, and that's a great thing.
yeah.
But equally, there's some people that probably aren't buying the CD because they know they can just go home and stream it. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
I've
hard one. You feel like you're selling your soul a bit when you put it onto the streaming services.
Yeah, I understand kind of exactly where you're coming from. I think I mean the way I used to use or still do use Spotify is more for discovery and to listen to, especially if someone contacts me and says, "Oh, I'm interested in a gig and I've not heard them before." It's a quick way of going out and having a listen to them. But then if it's something that I want to listen to, then I'll find out, buy it. Admittedly, I buy CDs, especially at gigs and things like that, but I don't listen to. I tend to rip the CD as soon as I've got it because I have it on my phone in the car or on my Mac when I'm working, sort of thing. So
Yeah, I'm the same. I do stream because I spend a lot of time in a car.
mm,
But yeah, it's not economically fair for musicians, and we kind of all know that. But you're right, you kind of got to have it out there because if someone wants to look you up, if they
yeah,
see they actually can't listen to your music, then they're going to be like, well, what's she doing? I want to hear her.
yeah.
So it's a hard
But
one.
I don't look at the numbers or the listens or the streams. It's just I do
You
want to
know
hear
what? Me
music.
neither. I don't even log into my Spotify artist account. I don't really care how many people are listening to my music
Yeah.
out, online. It's not the
And I
point.
think I think the point you made before as well about the listening to an album, because something that I have started doing in the last couple of years is buying vinyl. And that always was a very deliberate way of listening to music. You remember from the 80s, you go out and buy an album and you put it on and you listen to it all the way through, and you'd be sitting there not doing anything else, just sitting, that's how I used to listen to it. And now I find music is a lot more background sort of stuff that I have on, but it's nice to have that deliberate, the physical media. And like I say, CDs, I've still got a CD player there, it's connected up, but I just don't tend to listen to them. But now there's just something more deliberate about, put on a vinyl record and listen to it and turn it over and
Yeah, totally. And we were
listen to
talking
the
about
B-side.
this. We are talking about this in an educational, from an educational point of view at the weekend with the kids, like saying that thing about deep listening. And I think when you're trying to learn as a jazz musician, you have to do that obsessive listening. And I used to have like one CD, and until I bought the next one, I'd just obsessively listen to that one. Whereas, you know, there's too much out there on streaming services, and you don't
Mm,
get that kind of, you can't really drill into one record. And for people that are starting to learn jazz and starting to play, they need to go through that process of really deeply listening to something. And I don't think Spotify, etc., really facilitates that very well. It's too easy just to skip on to the next thing.
mm. Cool. So let's talk about your project then. You're developing under the mentorship scheme. So From Darkness into Light is the title of it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, tell us about that then. What's that about?
Okay, so um it's kind of hard to explain, but I have perfect pitch. Um and it means that I hear music in quite a specific way. I hear sort of shifting tonal centers and harmonic movement, perhaps not in the conventional way that other people do. And I hear different keys as having different sort of varying darkness and light qualities to them, you know, sort of
Okay.
moods
Yeah.
almost. So I wanted to kind of explore that, and I thought it would give me a really good focus as I was writing as well, because it would make me think about how I feel when I hear certain keys, and I can write in a way that reflects that. So it was a good way of having a stimulus for composition. And the concept is that at the start of the set, it'll start in the very darkest of the keys, and there's more of kind of, so my opening tune, in fact, is like a modal thing, and it's got quite a heavy. It's in like a very, what I consider to be a very dark key, E flat minor. And I do wonder actually how much this will resonate with audiences, whether they'll actually get it or whether it's more of like a me thing. I'll be really interested to speak to people afterwards and see
Hmm.
whether they felt a certain way when they heard a certain key and the way in which I write in each of those keys. And then yeah, it moves through into the brightest of keys. So it ends with a blues um in A major, which is a bright key, and it sounds particularly bright on tenor to me as well, because that's B
Hmm.
major, and you know it's an unusual thing. So yeah, that's kind of the premise behind it, and it lent itself to composing in a way where each tune has a very distinctive feel and groove,
Right.
and they all sound quite well. I hope they all sound quite individual as a result. In terms of my writing process and stuff, I think I expected my aim with the project was to get away from writing in sort of functional way. You know, I'm a pretty straight ahead player. I'm open about
Yeah.
that. You know, I play bebop, and I was expecting to take it much more contemporary. And I'll admit that I haven't gone as contemporary as I was perhaps expecting it to,
Hmm.
and that's for a couple of reasons. Partly because you know, I like straight ahead music, so therefore I want to write in that way, and naturally I end up writing in that way. And I didn't
Hmm.
want to force it and
Yeah.
sort of be untrue to myself musically. It's like a trade-off between wanting to push myself, but also not wanting to lose the fundamental core of who I am
Right.
as a musician.
Yeah.
But also taking into consideration who's in my band and the guys that I'm playing with, and trying to write in a way that suits their vibe, and
Yeah.
you know, not take them in a direction that they're not as used to playing in as well. So it's kind of a happy medium of exploring harmony and sort of groove and feel in a way that I haven't done before, but also within a more functional setting.
Yeah. Excellent. So talking about your band, who's in the band? Who's going to be playing with you?
Okay, so is it worth mentioning the two different dates? Because I've got two different bands, slightly differing for each of the two gigs as part of the mentor
Oh,
scheme.
okay.
So
Yeah, cool.
yeah, so on the 6th of September at 1,000 Trades, that will be with, so Alex on saxes. Alex will be on tenor, and I'll be on alto and tenor.
Hmm.
And then on piano we've got Dave Newton, on bass we've got James Oston, and on drums Matthew Holmes. And yeah, so Matt and James are both based in Birmingham as well, and I think James did this exact scheme last year, so
Right.
that's it's nice to for him to come back and do that as well. And then on the 13th at the Bonded Warehouse in Stourbridge, I'm with James again on bass, but this time on piano and drums we've got Graham Harvey and Steve Brown, who regularly work with my quartet, and so that's a slightly more familiar lineup to me. Yeah, they'll bring something slightly different to it as well. So I'm kind of looking forward to hearing how the two nights vary.
Mm,
You know, it'll be fundamentally the same thing, but you know, hearing how two different sets of people interpret my music, that's going to be fun, I think.
excellent. Yeah, looking forward to that. I'll definitely be down for the one in Birmingham, because I think
Right.
I'm on camera duty that weekend, so that's going to be great. So I'd like to finish up then, just talk about how the Jazz Central mentoring scheme has helped you develop as an artist.
Yeah, it's been massively helpful because I felt like I got to a point in my career where I have unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, I've been typecast as a standards player and
Mm,
someone who, you know, plays bop tunes and plays stuff from American Songbook canon. And I love that, don't get me wrong. But I think it was very much time for me to kind of express my voice as a composer, and I've always been really interested in arranging, both for small ensemble, sort of reworking standards, reharmonizing. I'm
Mm.
obsessed with harmony and exploring different ways of navigating through a standard and reharmonizing it. And I also love kind of large ensemble arranging as well, like writing big band charts and stuff. So, I've come from a place where I've already got some arranging chops, but for some reason, I've never kind of actually explored writing my own things. And I think that's probably down to like the fear of failure, if I'm quite honest.
Hmm.
I never finished music college, and I never sort of got to that point in the course where it was like everyone must compose. And
Right.
I feel like I've been left behind by certainly peers of, my age group, in that everyone's writing their own stuff. And it's like, oh, but Alex is still playing standards. So yeah, this has been the real kind of motivation and like great opportunity to actually write. And turns out I'm not as bad at it as I thought I was going to be. Like all of the skills that I've got from arranging and
Yeah.
all the skills I've got as a player, they translate onto the
Mm.
page. And having the sort of the structure of the project and the project title gave me a focus and a stimulus for each composition, and I found that it was much easier to write than I expected it to. And Alex's breadth of experience across all the, one of the reasons I admire him so much is because he covers the full spectrum of styles in his playing, and he knows about every little bit of the history of jazz. He's, got a phenomenal knowledge and
Mm.
understanding, and sounds authentic in any setting. So that's why I felt like he was the perfect match as a mentor for me, because he kind of, yeah, he could share his knowledge of all his sort of original stuff, but also with the kind of history backing it up.
Yeah.
And he's given me great, stuff to listen to, and sort of given me ideas for where to start. And, have you tried writing a bitonal blues and all stuff that I would never think about, but it's, given me that starting point to then take it away and actually come up with something. And I'd never have done this if it hadn't have been for the mentor scheme. I would have just ploughed on playing standards
That's
because
brilliant.
I like it.
Yeah, no, that's really great to hear. So, yeah, really looking forward to hearing your new compositions and that project. And just to recap, that'll be on Friday, the 6th of September at 1000 Trades in Birmingham. But that'll be kicking off the Jazz Central Mentoring Festival that's happening over that weekend, the 6th to the 8th. And then again, you'll be at the Bonded Warehouse in Stourbridge with Devon Harrison's wonderful club over there on the Friday the 13th of September. So it's been wonderful chatting with you today, Alex. Thanks so much for your time and your very, very busy schedule. Let you get back to your day, your day and your work. And when is there a gig tonight, or are you...
No, there isn't. I'm teaching a bit this afternoon, and then I'm back onto the show tomorrow in Wolverhampton. So yeah,
Brilliant,
pretty straightforward week.
good stuff. Excellent. Well, have a great week, and see you in Birmingham.
You too. Thanks, Dave.